The pensive expression on the face of Grandmaster Sam Sevian, the undisputed MVP of the Garden State Passers. Can Sam Sevian carry? Here comes Shakkriyar. He sits back down and he makes a move. And
no resetting
he's
there.
down a minute.
He's down
Not
a
a
minute.
good start for Shak.
Absolutely. He's down a little more than a minute. We see a Queen's Gambit decline. Shak there blitzing out, trying to get that time back on the clock, but with just a 2-second increment, that's not going to be possible. Kaisa can't be too happy with Shakkriyar just letting a minute go down on the clock. It also is a bit of mind games, for Sam. He's waiting there for the opponent to come, and there we have it. We've got a very combative middle game here, a sort of a Queen's Gambit accepted structure arising.
Yeah, this is a Moran Queen's Gambit accepted, a cross between a Slav, and this structure could change in a variety of ways. Generally, Black's idea is to push c5 ASAP and correct the structure on the Queen side. This is one of the sharpest lines of the Slav. Black strikes with c5, White strikes with e5. There are simultaneous captures. I think Knight takes b5 is the main move here. Tanya, this is a line which has existed and has been popular, I think, for well over 20 years. Garry Kasparov contributed to its development in the 1990s. I know nothing about the theory other than Knight takes b5. A takes b5 must be a move here. He's played it.
You pick up the Knight on
take
f6.
on f6. Tons of captures and a crazy position. Just what Sam Sevian wants. This is exactly
100%.
what he needed to get.
This is the dream when you have to win on demand for your team. The pressure is on, and this is exactly the kind of chess that you want on the board. Now, I was focusing too much on the player, but you're absolutely right. This is the main line theory of the Miran, and it is such a tactical line. It is such a combative middle game, and we can see the pawn structure in front of Black's king. Queen e2 not only targets that b5 pawn, but is also x-raying that e6 pawn. So always look for tactics down the e file. Black first needs to decide, do you want to defend this pawn by advancing it one step ahead with b4? Because giving it up, White will be super happy to get a bishop there.
Absolutely. White will be happy to get that pin, as well as connected passers, which a lot of people underestimate in the middle game. But A and B pawns, they run very fast. A4, B4, A5. Before you know it, White could lay down the wood on the queen side. So Sam Sevian deciding whether, and if so, how to defend the pawn. No, he will not defend the pawn. Bishop e7 on the board. Tabasco sauce being added to the position by Sam Sevian. I think he wants to play rook g8 and put his foot down on the king side. But what a risky approach. If I'm Shakkriyar, I am taking that pawn and running with it.
I am Indian. I love a good Tabasco. Spice it up as much as you can. And that is what is happening in this position. Bishop b7. So the idea is, of course, to target the g2 pawn. We see Black's pawn structure. Yes, it looks hideous. But the good news is you've opened up a g file for the counterplay. Of course, White has to bite the bullet and just say, you know what, I'm going to pick it up. Show me the money. And now one thing that works for White is that the tactics with taking on f3, the queen would have landed on f3 and hit that rook on a8. So you don't have time to do that, which is why first Sam Sevian gets the rook into the game, because this is a long-term sacrifice. It's really not about winning something back on the spot, but just creating big problems and big questions to White's king.
Exactly. And I would cement the bishop with a4 if I'm Shakkriyar, just to make sure that the queen doesn't get overextended. Once Black, let's say, castles queenside and gets the rook out of its vulnerable position, Shak will ponder his next move in this important position, giving us a good chance to travel to the bird's eye view, because two of the other games.
What do you make of this position?
God, Tanya, this is PCL action at its finest. The final round, an exchange sacrifice, crazy attack, and a 5-minute time advantage. What else could we ask for? Sam Sevian has sacrificed an exchange, and he first sacrificed the pawn on b5. What does he have in return? Well, look at that pressure that he's got on g2. Look at the pressure that he's got on White's queen. Shakkriyar is just barely escaping here. Queen h5 is on the board. The analysis board is up. Oh my gosh, Tanya, it appears that knight g4 wins the game because it attacks the pawn on f2. And after knight takes d3, this is the hardest thing to spot. You actually can take on f2 anyway, because suddenly the pressure on g2 grows unbearable. I'd have to rook g, nope, not rook g3. Rook takes g2 is simply checkmate. And look at how beautifully Black can checkmate with rook takes h2, queen takes f2, bishop g2, and then the other bishop steps in to deliver the mate. This is just one of many mating options. Tanya, knight g4 is winning for black. It's official. The eval bar confirms it. Well,
Wow.
Sevian has 7 minutes to find
He
it.
needs to find it. This is the moment, and he has slowed down, so that makes me feel like he is on the right path. He's definitely thinking about it. Also, let's point out that if you step back with the queen to h4, trying to defend f2, it doesn't work. You can still take on f2 because after knight f2, queen f2, there's bishop c5, pinning that queen, winning the game. Tactics across the board here. Will Sam Sevian find the killer knight g4?
It's amazing that knight takes f2 is essentially a pre-move after knight g4. It works either because of the pressure on g2 or because of the alignment of white's king and queen. Thank you for showing that line. That really might be the challenge for Sevian. I think he's going to see knight g4, knight takes d3, knight takes f2, but can he spot knight takes f2 in response to queen h4? He knows there's something. He can sense it. You can just sense the wheels turning in his brain. He's got his hands over his head. He's forcing himself to concentrate. It's so important, Tanya, in these situations, not to rush. You're tempted to make a move, but you got to double check, triple check. You got to convince yourself that, no, it isn't too good to be true. You're beating Shakkriyar Mamediarov in 20 moves with black. Will we see the knight hop into g4? Oh. This might be a game changer, a match changer, if Sevian can deliver with black.
Such a huge moment. And also the problem here playing black is that you have so many tempting options that you have to fight. You know, you can trade the bishops on d2. You can fall back with the bishop on c5, put pressure on f2, and everything seems like you've got a pleasant position. But when you've got a pleasant position, try and wrap it up in the moment, especially when you're playing against somebody like Shakkriyar Mamediarov. This is a big moment, and I'm liking that Sam is taking his think here. He is calculating these lines. Sam, chat, will Sam Sevian find knight g4? He reaches out for his mouse. He's about to make a move.
This is just tension at its finest. I mean, my heart is beating out of my chest. How might Sam Sevian feel? And Tanya, it's so important to understand that when you know the correct move, and he's playing knight g4, he's got to sift through all of the false positives, all of the wrong moves, and he's done just that. And he's left himself with 5 minutes to convert this position. I don't see a single way for white to last more than 2 moves, Tanya.
What a beast.
This is insane.
What a beast. Sam Sevian OP in the chat. I mean, how did he play this in this format? Just finding this move. Your bishop on b4 is hanging. Unbelievable stuff. And I'm loving it. Shakkriyar Mamediarov in big trouble. I don't really see a way for him to hold on now.
No. I mean, it's not even like the Magnus A Wonder game from yesterday where A Wonder had to find a series of accurate moves to finish off white's king. Sam literally needs one more accurate follow-up. And that follow-up is going to be either knight takes f2 or queen takes f2. Relatively speaking, bishop e3, that might be the only way to stave off immediate defeat, Tanya. Let's bring up an analysis board one more time. Bishop e3, knight takes e3, and queen takes h7. Just trying to create as much chaos on the board as possible. But if I'm not mistaken, even a very straightforward move like rook g6, and oh my god, I see a crazy mate, if I may share, f takes e3, queen takes e3, king h1, queen takes e1. Just one of how many incredible mating constructions are we treated to in this game?
That is amazing. That is a stunning line, Daniel. And of course, you can also just pick up the knight with the bishop, but this just shows the power play that is black's position. Sam, indeed a beast, as Greg is pointing out, but he needs to finish it. By the way, queen h4 was the other line that we were seeing, and knight f2 on the board. He has picked up the pawn because white can't recapture the knight. The bishop will fall back to c5, pinning and winning that queen. This is busted for white. Bishop e3, you just pick it up, and after queen f2, you go bishop c5.
You need one more move here. I think Shaka's actually done a great job. He has found the best practical chance, but Sam has an eternity to figure out the follow-up. It appears that queen to e2, not the easiest move to find, ends the game immediately, because in the event of the queen trade, the pawn appears on e2, and after bishop takes e1 and rook takes g2, white's king is once again checkmated. But can Sam keep himself composed? Can he find queen e2? Tanya, bishop c5 might also win the game, but that's a lot less convincing because after you play d2, the knight can appear on f3 and block the light squared bishop. So you can definitely still go wrong here. And how many times have we seen top players pull out the seemingly impossible? Sam Sevian, once again, his hands over his head. He knows the gravity of this moment. This is unbearable tension.
Oh my god, Daniel, he found knight g4. He's gonna find queen e2. He is in the flow of this attack. And as you're pointing out that you trade on your own terms, but he makes the move queen e4.
Also good. Also good.
Which
Also
also
good.
seems extremely strong because you're threatening to go bishop takes e1. You pick up that knight, take away the key defender of the g2 square, and it all falls apart. I don't see a way for white to counter these threats. If you go knight f3, it's not good enough because the g2 pawn is pinned, the queen and the bishop. You can simply pick up the knight.
Or you could even play bishop c5 and then sack a rook on g2. But
Ooh.
queen takes f3 is simple and strong. Rook d2, the only move. Shakkriyar playing the engine moves to stay in the game. Just incredible resistance. Rook g5 is once again the best move. A rook lift to f5, knocking the queen away. And once the queen is knocked away, by the way, bishop c5, that might be even the bigger problem for Shak. He's down to 40 seconds. If he pulls this off, then, then I'm just going to be in absolute shock for the rest of this week. But Sam, just a couple more moves away. Shakkriyar keeps his legs churning, keeps giving himself opportunities to pull off a miracle. This might decide the match. If Sam wins, though, Tanya, obviously the comeback isn't complete. They need to deliver on the other boards, but this is exactly what the passers needed.
This is what makes it so tough to beat the best in the world because they're so resilient and so resourceful. And that is what Shak is showing with his play in such a difficult position. But Sam is literally just centimeters away from wrapping this up. But still little work to be done. Like you're mentioning, just a couple more precise moves. Rook f5 with a direct idea. You hit the queen. The queen doesn't have a good square. Defending that knight on e1, keeping everything under control. So after rook f5, if you do pick up the bishop on b4, black just ends up with a lot of extra material. I think you can pick up the rook, but you can also pick up the queen and then pick up the other rook as well.
Yeah, but Tanya, here's the tough thing. After rook f5, knight f3, again, I'm looking at the eval bar, but I'm not seeing a clear path to victory for black. The engine reveals like a very computerish move. Rook to c5, that's so hard to spot. It's a weird geometric move going to c1. Instead, Sam Sevian has played the second best move, but he's released a lot of his advantage. Bishop c5 liquidates to an endgame in which, yes, black is winning, but now the win is a lot harder to achieve. I'm in disbelief that Shakkriyar has even managed to get this into an endgame. This is ridiculous. He's going to be a pawn down, and Sam should be able to convert, but he's now got a lot more work to do than just a couple of moves ago.
Shak is indeed fighting well. This is an absolutely insane game. Wait, he takes on d3, but this allows rook g2 to come in with a check. The queen is pinned.
Even better is to actually take the queen first, because if the king takes, then you can take on g2 and actually get into a pawn endgame because the b pawns are easy to stop with black's king. Sam spots it. And
spots it. What a beast. And Shak there, he was shaking his head in disbelief how quickly it's gone from bad to worse with the white pieces. And Sam Sevian just blowing up the board with insane move after move. Pick it up, pick up the rook, pick up the pawn, pick up the rook. And that's it. It's a winning endgame.
Basic Betty right here. And Shak
that is
designs.
It. We've got a result. Wow. Oh my God. The Garden State Passers, Daniel, they are on their way for a comeback. And we see there Sam. He knows he's done his job. Now it's up to the teammates.